It's not always going to be the most successful day. And so I think almost expecting that, like, oh, I should be making this much off the bat, or if I'm not making X figures, I'm doing something wrong, which I know is a lot of messaging and marketing and social media nowadays. And I get it from the hook and the scroll stopping efforts, but I encourage just people not to always listen to that noise and to remember, everyone's going to have a different journey to success. Some people will say it was podcasts. Some people will say it was YouTube. Some people will say it's Instagram. Like, find what works for you, what you love doing, what you can sustain doing, and do that, because that's what's going to drive you more every day than the outside noise.
Lauren, I'm so excited to have you on as a podcast guest. So we are working together over the last, month or so, although we met a long time ago, but man, it's been so nice having you on the team, just helping me with all the stuff. So I'm very excited to share your story today. For those people listening who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you.
Yes. So my name is Lauren Evans, and I have a business called Design and Streamline Solutions, where I help other small business owners to streamline their tech and automate their business systems so that they can save time, grow faster, and stress way less. So yes, that's my story. But I have a background in corporate, worked in the corporate environment for 8 years. A lot of experience, was blessed to meet my husband there. And then I decided to take my talents to the small business world. I just had a passion for more. And that's why I started my business. And that's how we met.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and I love what you do, because I am not the tech person. And that is the biggest headache for me. But we'll get there at the end of the show. But for right now,
honestly, what I heard so much. So, you are why I started this 10 years ago.
I know, millions of entrepreneurs need you. It's just you. Yeah. All right. But now for my personal favorite part of the show, we travel back in time to young you. And I love to ask, what was that first money you earned? Like the first, $5, whatever it was. Like, what job did you do? How old were you?
Okay.
Tell us all the things.
So assuming we're not talking like chores as a child, I would say babysitting. Babysitting is the first time, kind of right around at like 12 years old. I guess maybe you'd call it like mom assisting, because you're not quite old enough to fully babysit at home. But mom definitely needs help, so they can clean, they can shower, they can, do things they need to do without littles underfoot. So 12 years old, I was babysitting someone my mom had met at the gym and, just kind of had become acquaintances with. And so I started babysitting her children. And from there, babysat for several years, and then got my first job right before my 16th birthday, like official, W-2 type job.
Oh, okay. All right. So you were kind of second hand to the mom. So the mom was at home and you would help. Okay. Nice. And what did that experience teach you? Because 12, you're a kid, and it always fascinates me with these kids who work, so young, and what did that teach you? How did that make you grow? Can you remember what you were thinking at the time? Like, oh, I can really help. I'm really valuable here. I don't know. What went?
That's a great question. I would say, obviously one part of it was you're excited to kind of be making your own money as a kid. It's a big deal. And especially when you don't have things like rent or other adulting responsibilities. But it was also, yes, it made me feel it felt nice to be needed and to be helpful and to know that I was doing something valuable for this mom, and that because I would always watch my brother and sister, which is a little bit different. And so to know that I could actually help a mom and that she got to have some time to do things she needed to do, just gave me a lot of confidence, made me feel very grown up, very mature. So I guess it just, a lot of responsibility, a lot of growth, and it just, you feel like a big kid, which I think at that age, you're always trying to be older. Now we're not trying that so much. But in those days, you're always trying to be older. You're always trying to prove that you can be responsible and trusted. And so I felt like it did a lot for that.
Oh, yeah. And that one word that I picked up was confidence. it's feeling that you can do something, that you're capable, and you can do things. Yeah, I love that. All right. And then you said you got your first proper job just before your 16th birthday. And what was that?
So Papa Murphy's, the pizza chain, I actually had met the owner of the local Papa Murphy's chain that was here in San Diego, which we don't even have them anymore here. Fun fact, he was actually related to, I think he was the son of the family who started Rubio's. But yes, so I was working with him at my brother and sister's elementary school fair. There was some sort of carnival or fair going on, and I was working with him in a booth. Can't remember the capacity, but he was really taken by my maturity and, the way I worked with him and such, and said if I was interested in a job, I could contact him. And so I moved forward and contacted him. And sure enough, at 15, with my work permit, of course, I got hired, and I would kind of be the person that if you came in, I would take your crust and I would put the sauce on and I would put your toppings on for you and then package it up. And sometimes I'd work the register and off you would go with your pizza.
Nice. And okay, 2 questions here.
Yes.
Do you think the 12-year-old you was preparing for this again at a young age? Do you think lessons learned there led into this?
Into what I'm doing now?
Into your maturity, well, at that age, at 15, to get that job?
I would say so, yes.
In those building blocks?
I would say that, and also I was, being that I was 5 and 6 years older than my siblings, kind of all growing up, I was often put in a role to help or watch them or not be responsible for them, but, just assist. So I think between that and a lot of the babysitting, it helped me to mature, sometimes maybe quicker than I would have liked, but did give me some of those skills and the ability to carry myself in a way that obviously this gentleman, saw some amount of responsibility and felt like he wanted to hire me at 15.
I want to know, tell me a little bit about being that older sibling. Like how has it shaped you, who you are today?
That's a good question. Because there's definitely pros and cons to it, I would say. There are pros and cons to being the older sibling. In some ways, I do think I had to grow up a bit quicker than my siblings, just being that responsible older sibling and being the one that was supposed to be looking after them, supposed to be thinking ahead, those types of things. And obviously that carried into babysitting and things like that. But that also being said, I don't know that I would have had, to your point, those opportunities or carried myself in such a way at 15 that somebody would have felt confident hiring me. That's younger than most people get jobs and most people get hired. 16 is typically the benchmark for that. And so it doesn't go unnoticed that somebody was willing to take that chance on me, and that in just a couple hours maybe I remember we were in a booth of some kind and we were either like selling tickets, we were doing something. And clearly in just that short period of time, he felt like I could be someone responsible in his business, with his reputation on the line, his money on the line. And so it doesn't go unnoticed. So that's where I say there are definitely pros and cons. Sometimes it would have been nice to be the kid that was looking after and didn't have to be so responsible or always thinking of all the things. But it also kind of helped me to be that person at 15 that was able to get a job and have always had a job since then, and to even start my business now.
Yeah.
Or not now, 10 years ago, but, to have my own business now.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I love that insight. Yeah, that's very real. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Now, of course, I need to know, are there any stories? There must have been some hard times, especially as a 15-year-old worker, 16-year-old worker, in a customer facing. I know you said you put the pizza together, but then you also served the clients. Was that right? Served the customers. So you've got to have some great customer stories. My favorite.
Yes. So actually, I would say I wasn't there for long. I ended up going to high school for a little bit out in Minnesota. So while I was out there, I worked at got a Great Clips, I believe it was, a Great Clips as kind of the receptionist. So I'd greet customers, sweep hair, not always the funnest things. And then I would say kind of my longest stint as a teenager was actually working at an Albertsons, where at 16, I was a bagger, as they called it, or they had probably a better name for it. But we were the ones that would bag the groceries. And the hardest part about that, honestly, was doing the shopping carts. Those people that have to go and gather the shopping carts, especially in the summer, in the heat of summer, that have to go and gather and push, 10 shopping carts. Please just put your shopping carts back in the corral, people. You have no idea how much that helps. So I would say the hardest thing, I would reflect more on that job, right? Because I had it for about 2 years, I would say, from about 16 to 18. Some of the things that were hardest there was, I think at that age, there's a lot going on both personally, right? As a 16-year-old, you're navigating high school, you're navigating sports, relationships, figuring out who you are, independence from parents, while also trying to work, think about college. So I think some of it was, struggling to find that balance, recognizing that you do have to work and you don't get every day off that you may want because something comes up with friends, and learning to strike that balance. Also having to work with customers and maybe apologize for things sometimes that aren't your fault, right? Or having people yell at you for, again, things that aren't perhaps your fault. Or do things that you just really don't want to do. I really didn't want to check the bathrooms, the bathrooms that people were using and have to clean. 6 a.m., sure, no one's used them yet. But 6 p.m., not always the most fun, but it's part of just kind of putting in your dues, doing carts at noon in 80 plus degrees, not fun. But again, you put in your dues and, you can rise. And then at 18, once you can be a cashier, legally speaking, and check out alcohol, I was ready to be promoted. And so, doing that kind of built it up. But, it's definitely teaches you a lot. I think having to be in customer service and, these are still a little before the days of cell phones where you can't even be checking your phone all the time or knowing what's going on. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry.
You certainly did.
Okay.
So I am making notes now because you're saying things and I'm like, oh, I've got to go back to that. And then I get sidetracked again through the conversation, which is always what happens. I love natural conversation. So the first thing I want to dive into, you said paying your dues. And we'll probably get into this towards the end of the episode, but I would like your take on that and a challenge. I do see it as a challenge now with the instant gratification. And I find that it's not that people are unwilling to pay their dues. It's you can do a self-checkout and we don't need baggers anymore. And so there's lack of even opportunity. So it's not, I would never say the younger generation is trying to get out of it or anything like that. There's literally lack of opportunities. So I would like your take on paying your dues. What is that if, in a world that we can't be a bagger, for example? What did that teach you? What did you have to go through to pay your dues?
That is a really good point because you're right. There are a lot of positions, whether it be fast food, whether it be, and I'm in the state of California where, fast food is a completely different animal even right now with minimum wage. And so there's a larger push to have screens. I went into a Panera the other day and honest to God, I don't know. We didn't think we could order from a person. We truly thought our only option was a screen. And then I guess if you really had trouble, it kind of turned out there was a person maybe we could have ordered from. But you're exactly right. The idea of having multiple people there is, they're getting away with less employees now. And so some of those opportunities for people to pay their dues, work what we consider an entry-level teenage job, have gone to the wayside or have been eliminated. Obviously not all of them. We're still going to need people to stock clothing stores, fold the clothing, put it away after the fitting rooms, things like that. But that being said, I do think that it is important, regardless of what you I don't want to say ultimately want to be, but, for instance, most of us in whether we're a bagger, whether we're folding clothes, whether we're working at McDonald's, typically don't go into those jobs thinking that that's going to be what we do for 20, 30, 40 years, right? Not that there's anything wrong with staying in a company or corporation like that for that long, but typically starting in a position like that, you're starting there, right? And that's what you go into it with. And so I do think there is something to be said that everyone should start in a position where you do have to be managed by someone else. You have to interact with the public. You have somebody else perhaps dictating your schedule to you. And, there's somebody else holding you accountable. And I think that is important, whether you want to have your own business, whether you want to rise through the ranks and be the person that now runs that clothing store or that McDonald's. And so I think it's important because even if you want to own your own business, you're like, I have no intention of like working for somebody else. I have great ideas. I don't even want to go to college. I'm not saying you have to, but even then, I think you would be hard pressed to really understand how to then later employ somebody, how to, interact with the public, how to potentially anticipate some of the objections or some of the concerns, some of the problems that you might receive if you haven't interacted with the public, right? If you've never been an employee, you don't know what it makes to be a good employer. If you haven't had a chance to have to, abide by somebody else making your schedule and having to ask them for time off, you don't know how to maybe balance a schedule or how to consider that for other people. Not to mention even just the products that you make and some of the customer service aspects. You're going to be at a severe disadvantage if you don't learn to anticipate those things. So, and I'm not saying there's always not new things thrown at you all the time, but it helps to know and be able to help put yourself in that customer shoe. Because if you can't put yourself in a customer shoe, how are you going to design something that benefits that customer?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I'm kind of taking your concept and naming it the elements of Jews, because that's what it felt like. You just listed things that were the key elements of that sort of work. And I love that. And linking into that, which was my second takeaway anyway, was that element of sacrifice. You said sometimes I had to work and not hang out with my friends, and some people don't want to do that, whether that's, in your teen years as a business owner. I can speak personally. I've definitely missed out on a few weekends here and there with my family because of building a business. And so it's that sacrifice. When is it worth it? When is it not? That, we don't need to get too philosophical, but what did that element of sacrifice mean to you? How, what did you take away from that?
I think that's a very complex question there, because I do think there are two sides to it, right? I think there is something to be said for life isn't meant to go our way, right? Like, it's not about everybody moving out of the way, paving the easy road for us, giving us everything that we've ever wanted, every day off. Like, that's just not how it works. So there is an amount of, life isn't going to be fair. Life isn't always going to be easy. You are going to have to make choices. And so it taught me responsibility. And so it taught me even in college, as I was having to make choices and balance my school schedule, balance my work schedule, balance my coursework. There were times I remember going to parties and a friend would be like, we'll just crash on a couch here or there. And I'm like, that's not an option for me. I have to go to work. Like, crashing on some couch, maybe finding a few hours of sleep. Like, I have to work. I have 2 jobs tomorrow. And so I think that's where I learned, like, okay, I'll still go, but I'm going to leave at this time and make sure I'm in my bed because I need to work. And so it just taught me how to make those smarter choices to where I'm not that person that's not showing up to work and being fired, or I'm rolling in an hour late, still smelling like alcohol. That's just, that was not acceptable for me. And so it did set me up to where I was able to, I think, balance the schedule very well. I pretty much put myself through college, whether it be help with, work reimbursement programs, or, blessed be my ex-boyfriend and now my current husband, also have helped with school and tuition and things. But, it's like, I was working hard for it. I had worked before. And so I knew what that balance was like. And I knew how to make those choices. I knew what was worth taking a day off work and what wasn't. And that being said, it has also taught me moving forward now that money is not always what's important. There is a balance to be said for having time, and being able to spend time with people and be there for things. I'm not saying I can be there for everything, even as a business owner myself now. But it gave me some perspective to be able to understand, what is the most important is perhaps climbing the corporate ladder, getting the salary, having this benefit here and there. Is that what's important? Or, is it more important that perhaps I was able to spend time with my grandma and visit her twice a day in the hospital, before she passed 6 months after or not even 6 months. I think it was even 2 months after I had quit my corporate job, and it's moments like that where I never would have been able to do this in corporate, and spending that time with her when she passed a few months later was so valuable, and, those are the moments that I don't say mean the most, and then because I did grow up in that culture of, you get your corporate job, that's what you do, you stay there, and then you see things like COVID, you see things like people getting laid off, you see people being told they can move out of the state and then being called back, and it makes you realize, what kind of control you want over your life and what you're willing to sacrifice and work for and where you're not, and for everybody, that line and boundary is different. Some people love a job where they can go, they can clock in, they can clock out, and they don't have to think about it. Other people want more flexibility. Other people can't stand flexibility and need a routine and a schedule, and they need 8 hours away from their kids and house. So, everyone has to find what works for them, but going through that allows you to figure out what those moments are and where you find your joy, what's important to you, and where you want to be.
Writing more things down. We're going to get to it later. All right. Because now I want to understand. So teenage years, college, really cool foundation, I feel. And then you said you worked in corporate for 8 years. Tell me a little bit about that and that experience specifically, and we don't always need to dive deep into the hardship, but I do like to unpack, because I feel, and even I've lied before, my corporate career, it was so great. I climbed the corporate ladder. Yes, I did, but I also got rejected 4 times for internal promotions, by my own managers. So there's always that other side that I think we gloss over or we don't even tell people about. And this podcast is all about revealing those things. So share a bit about your experience, the good and the kind of behind the curtain.
Yeah, happy to. So I think from let's start with the goods. I was very blessed. At 18 years old, I had the opportunity to be a part-time supervisor at UPS. The big brown delivery company. It's been around for well over 100 years now. And it was a fantastic opportunity. Again, I was 18 years old. They were giving me some tuition reimbursement. I had a salary as a part-time employee. I had paid vacation, squeaked under the deadline before they cut the pension plan. Everything on paper, it was check, 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 right? I remember my parents even telling me well, you're set, you're done. You found your corporate career, you're done. And I was still even going to college at the time, obviously. And so from that regard, it was exciting. I felt on top of the world. I felt I had so much opportunity with this company that was worldwide, well-established. I had all the solid things and that, you should want. And, even then I worked my way up. Some of it was hard. My first shift was 5 to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday as a college student. Not ideal. Not when you want to be missing all your evening activities and social activities. I remember missing family dinners. There were all kinds of things because that's when I worked. And so, there were a lot of wonderful things. I learned how to deal with that, but it also allowed me to go to school during the day, gave me a full day to attend classes. So, it fit at the time. And then I continued to kind of earn more responsibility. I was given the opportunity to kind of pioneer a new part-time role that they had, which allowed me to get in front of some people that allowed me to get promoted into full-time as I think I had a semester left in college. And so I kept working my way up discovered how much I hated sales, which, yes, is ironic as a small business owner, but genuinely hate sales. I am not built for it. I do not want to do it. People that can do sales are a special breed. So I learned things, or even like I was so excited to get my sales position and then absolutely did not like it. So sometimes you also, you find out that was not the right fit for you. And then I got into corporate communications, which I absolutely loved. Like I loved the work I did. I loved some of the things I got to be a part of, like the really cool things that I got to be a part of. For instance, UPS commercial shoots. Like I actually got to participate in a few of the commercial shoots where I got to be on set. I got to help organize things. It is like the schedule of people that shoot even a 30-second commercial is grueling. You are talking 16-hour days. It is nuts. I have so much respect. So that was very exciting. Some really cool things that like I would never have been able to experience in my life otherwise. Was able to attend a basketball game at, LA Live in a suite when I accompanied one of our marketing team members. So some really cool experiences. But behind the curtain, I would also get to work and cry in my cubicle. Especially in that like corporate communications role, because, again, I had the check boxes. I was literally working in downtown LA. I could walk to the LA Live Center, walk to that Starbucks, I was right there in the thick of it. I was full-time in management. I was getting to do really cool things, but I also felt like something was so empty and so missing. I felt like they owned me. And not necessarily in particular, but just that corporate environment of, here's your laptop, here's your cell phone. We expect to see you for 10 hours a day. And also if an emergency comes up in the evening, we also expect that you're available then, and so it was just, there, even on vacation, there was an expectation that you still kind of checked your phone a couple times or checked your email a few times. Like you weren't really supposed to go on vacation for a whole week. And so it was just, in some ways I felt important, and that made you feel like, oh, like, I matter. But in other ways you kind of realize like, no, they'd probably just stick somebody else in my position if like something, Lord forbid, happened to me and I didn't come back from vacation, and I started to realize like, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. And I was in my 20s and I would get to my cube and just feel empty. I'm like, I'm sitting here, I was commuting an hour each way because my husband still worked in San Diego. I worked in LA. We lived in the middle and like commuted. And so I was commuting an hour each way. He was commuting. And literally I felt like life was work. We got up, we were out the door by like 5:30, before 6 every morning. I wasn't home until probably after 6 or 7 every night. We weren't eating healthy. We barely saw each other. We lived for the weekends when we had to do anything we wanted to do, plus all the grocery shopping, plus all the responsible stuff. And, we were spending way more money and more out of whack with finances, it's just like everything was chaos. Like I never felt like I could rest. I never really felt like satisfied. I'm just like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm just going to do for 30 more years of my life. Like, I'm going to come here, I'm going to sit in a cubicle, work behind this laptop, pretty much doing the same thing kind of year after year. Like, yeah, there are some cool highlights here and there, but it's kind of like every year we have these annual meetings, you plan them. Now we have these things, like these are your assignments and you're going to keep doing them year after year. And right or wrong, they weren't the best company at wanting to embrace change. So a lot of times when I'd come forward with new ideas and things to be creative and exercise that muscle, they weren't always met welcomingly. I felt like I was going against the grain. And I'm like, I don't feel like God created me and gave me this passion, gave me these talents, this skill. I don't think I worked and put myself through college and worked that hard to sit here in this cube and just do this. Like that couldn't have all meant for this. But then I also felt so wrong for feeling that way. I felt like, who am I to be so ungrateful? You're in your 20s, you have a pension, you've been here for, 6, 7, 8 years, you have a salary, like you have all of these things, you should be happy. And, people be like, you'll be a millionaire by the time you retire. You're a woman, you can go far, which was the number one thing that made me so angry. Like, if I'm going to go far in this company, let it be because I'm talented and because I'm skilled and I am the damn right person for that position, not because I'm a woman and you need to check a box. Do not do that.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Yes. No, that was my soapbox. Now I'll step off. But I think that's where I wasn't fulfilled. Like, I didn't love it. I didn't love feeling like we were always just trying to live for this weekend that was never enough, and that vacations couldn't even be enough, and that there was so little flexibility. And, it felt like Big Brother was always watching, and it was always this perception game of, well, do they think you're working enough? And I'm just like, I am not here for this. It just felt so unaligned with who I am. But like I said, I felt ungrateful. And so it took a long time to even just come to terms with admitting that, like, I didn't love this. And I prayed a lot about it. And, God finally, even after kind of getting me stirred up and making me feel like it was my time to go, finally gave me that solid nudge and, like, black and white answer I needed. And I took the leap. But I mean, yeah, that's, kind of the good, the fun, the exciting, the things you should want. And, behind the curtain, it wasn't for me. It didn't. I am okay maybe not having the pension. Maybe I will or won't be a millionaire when I retire. I mean, obviously everyone still hopes they are, but will that even amount to anything by the time I retire with the way the economy is going? So,
another podcast, Lauren.
But I'd rather live a life where I can see my grandma before she passes, where I can go to my friend's 40th birthday party that's out of town and spend that time with her, even if it wasn't super planned, or even if I'm on the bottom of the totem pole to ask for vacation. Like, I don't have to worry about that stuff. I can be there when my husband has time off or has a surgery. I can, be there for my friend while she's going through cancer and be there with her at every single one of her chemo treatments, like things that I would not be able to do and that matter so much more than the corporate check boxes, in my opinion and in my life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. So let's dig into that because, and as you know, I'm writing a book on literally not to be invisible and lose yourself. And that is the first thing I say is remember who you are. And I would like to know your journey. What steps or things, or, you said you prayed a lot and, let's talk, some people will believe, some people won't, but there are steps that are true for all, things that are true for all. And because how did you come to those values? I'm struggling with my question because it's a big deal. How did you get to the place where you were like, these things matter more than this thing? If you were telling, like, people might be sitting there in their cubicle crying and thinking, how do I know? How do I know?
So I think there were a couple things for me. One was my husband's a UPS driver. That's, we met obviously working together at UPS. And we had, and I obviously worked in management at UPS and I worked in communications. And we had a driver actually pass away while working. He was driving through a particular area, kind of a steep area that when it gets really windy, if the trailers aren't full, they can kind of roll. And so oftentimes they'll shut this part of the freeway down or they won't use it if they anticipate bad weather. And I forget all the exact conditions, but just the wrong combination of events occurred. The trailer rolled and this driver passed away. And I just remember, even though I didn't necessarily know that driver in particular, he was in the area of which I covered and did communications for. So I was very involved in some of the communications aspects, after the fact. And I remember that hit me kind of hard, where it's like, what if that had been, he was my boyfriend at the time, but what if that had been him? You know what I mean? Like, am I going to be happier that I was here at work than, spending time with him, or that we just had these few weekends together? And I remember the thought that kept coming up for me, and I know this might be a little bit morbid, was like, if I died tomorrow, who would show up at my funeral? What would they say? Like, chances are it'd be like probably a bunch of people from work saying she was a great employee, or she threw, her articles were great on the internal website, or, like she was great when we worked on these meetings together, or like, but it's like, what, who else am I showing up for? Is that what there is to life? Like, I don't want it to be remembered as somebody that worked hard, and that's kind of how I felt. It was hard for us to even maintain friendships because we both worked in a city and then lived in a different city. So it was like hard to be friends with people in LA when you live in Orange County, and hard to be friends, maintain friendships in San Diego when you're living in Orange County. And San Diego traffic does not make either of those commutes easy. So I think it was just, I was really struggling to feel like this is it. If I were to leave, if something were to happen, like I would be here at work, or it's like, oh, well, she worked really hard. Like, what would people say? Like that's what I want for my life. And it didn't seem like enough. And I had this deeper desire in me where I knew God had given me these gifts and these talents and these skills. And I felt like I'm too, not like, oh, I'm amazing at them, but I have too much talent in these areas to not be using them in some way. Right. And if this corporation doesn't value them, which is fine, then I must be meant to use them in some other way. And so I was slowly finding other ways to use them, whether it was like experimenting with, businesses or ideas or blogs, or helping others who had nonprofits or little things going on, and just starting to help them with the tech and some of those things that they weren't as comfortable with. And so it's just like, but I love this and I get so much joy out of this. And so I felt from that regard, I knew there couldn't have been a reason, and I didn't, like I said, and I didn't work that hard and sacrifice as much as I did. I mean, it took me 6 years to get through college because I had to take different semesters off because my work schedule and my school schedule wouldn't align, or my finances didn't align, or whatever it may be. And I'm like, I didn't do all of that to be here, to like in 10 years be like, well, I worked really hard. I got 15 years or however many years under my belt in corporate. But I haven't, had a chance to really do anything substantial or be with people or, and yeah, I guess that was the answer for me, I guess. Again, I know that's not going to be everybody's. But if something happened to me tomorrow, I would be okay, not necessarily having the same corporate check marks, but having known like the impact I made and the people I've been able to be there for and the relationships that I've been able to build.
Oh, love that. I love that reflection. So many good things out of that. This might need to be a replay moment.
Well, I want to be known as a good wife, a good friend, a good person, not a good employee.
Yeah. I love it. Now let's talk about what you do. How did this manifest into the business you now run, the things you now do, the people you serve, and we'll tell people how, they can work with you at the end. We're not quite at the end yet. So
yes,
I want the journey of leaving to starting your own business.
So yes, there's a bit of a journey there. So as I mentioned, I was kind of dabbling in other things, whether it be blogs, just trying to figure out what I would do, building skills, my own tech skills and such, helping with nonprofits here and there. That like coworkers were, oh, we're doing this. And, I would help them with an online form or a flyer or different things. And at the time, I had a friend of mine who I would purchase Mary Kay cosmetics from. And at one point she'd asked me, she's like, oh, like, I don't know, her or mom, someone was trying to hit a goal. Like, would you like to sell it? You're always purchasing stuff. And I laughed at her and I'm like, I hate sales. Remember, we've covered this, like, do not like sales. And literally laughed at her and said, no, thank you. Like, love you, but no, thank you. And so that went to bed. Well, then right around the time that I was really, like I said, praying for a while, feeling the most unsettled at corporate, Derek and I, my husband, went and visited these friends because they lived out of town, and we went and visited them. And topic of Mary Kay came up again, and there were so many products I wanted. And I'm like, you know what, whatever, I'll just sign up so I get a discount. I love a bargain. If you've met me in person, I love a bargain, a coupon code. I will tell you how to save money compulsively. I can't help it. My other skill. So I signed up for that reason, not really planning to do a darn thing with it other than save myself some money. And instead of maybe referring a friend to her here and there, I would take the sale. Well, I went back to work, ended up just in chats with a couple colleagues here and there, sold a couple things. And just started dabbling in the Mary Kay space. And what was nice was it was like semi-established business, right? Like I didn't have to come up with brand names. I didn't have to build websites. Like things were kind of established for you. So it was like a stepping stone to getting started in your own business without having to like start everything from scratch. And so it was a great opportunity. You know, I learned a bit about business. I learned about taxes. I learned about record keeping. I learned about all kinds of things. I also learned I have absolutely no desire to really do much of my own makeup, let alone help other people with their skincare and makeup. Like I have a lot of, you know, those lovely eye patches. If I remember to do them once or twice a month, it's a great month. Like I did them this morning, but you know, I have to make a concerted effort because it is not my, like, I'm not the self-care Sunday or like the 7-step masker. I'm sure I will pay for this as I get older, but we're working on it. So as I discovered that, I was going to networking meetings, and instead of having a deep desire to like ask you if you'd like to do your skincare with me and like have a conversation about it, I would end up asking you about your business and be like, hey, did you know we could like make that more efficient? Or there might be a simpler way to approach what you're doing here. And so I'd leave networking meetings instead of with facial appointments with like tech work and automation work and things like that. And people were so sweet and so kind. And so they would gently be like, well, Mary Kay is great. And, you know, you're good at that and all, but like, have you considered doing something more with this? So again, lots more God nudges, you know, led me to realize, oh, maybe I should be kind of leaning into more of like the tech and the business side of things as opposed to makeup. And when I really looked at it, that was what I spent my time doing. Like I wanted to like organize the tax records. I wanted to come up with things where people could sign up, but I didn't actually want to get people to sign up. So I'm being honest, you know, and because sometimes journeys aren't always like I went from here and then I had my perfect idea and everything went well. Like, no, I had a stepping stone. It gave me a chance to get my feet wet with business, to learn how to network, to learn what the components were without having to figure it out from scratch. And then I was able to make that pivot and be like, great, now we're not going to really do Mary Kay anymore. Like I had a few clients I, you know, continued to have here and there in my own stuff, but yeah, I don't even do that anymore. And now it's fully this. But yeah, and so I think back in 2016, I like committed and like made it official and all of that. But I've been doing it since I think 2015. But yeah, fully committed. You know, did all like the paperwork, all the official things, and yeah, so I started doing more of the tech and the automation work for people, and even that took a little bit of a journey. Because I have a marketing degree. And so originally I said, oh, I think this will be more marketing, right? So I thought my services were more marketing, helping, like I said, with, you know, still like maybe like flyers and online forms and just different things like that. Like presentations and before Canva, these are days before Canva, or Canva was still way new. And so, you know, helping people with that. And then as I would start to dive in and really work with people, what I realized was it wasn't so much like, I didn't want to do marketing. I didn't want to do social media or ads or things like that. But I liked the tech side. I liked being like, oh no, we can make this more efficient. Instead of having 4 steps to sign up, let's have 1. And then you'll automatically get this notice. And then they'll automatically get this notice. The information goes here and you're done. And people would be blown away. I would get so excited. And so it kind of transformed into like me just doing it under my name, to me being Design and Streamline Marketing, to me now being Design and Streamline Solutions. So, and I'm very open with sharing that story. Like at first I kind of used to hide or feel scared about sharing the like Mary Kay portion of the story and kind of how I did things under my name for a while and then marketing. But now I'm really open about sharing it and feel like it's an important piece to share because it's not linear. It's not perfect. Like you sometimes have to try some different things. And even from a faith perspective, they say you have to step out in faith. You know, it's not always going to be the right step, but you have to step out and see what God's going to do. And if it's not the right step, you'll know and you can take a new step. And if it is, you know, he shows up and it keeps continuing to grow. But like you still have to be able to step out and try those things. And I firmly believe had I not tried Mary Kay and taken those steps and gone to those meetings, I would not have then transitioned to what I'm doing now and seeing that there's that need and the value and that I really did have kind of an expertise in an area that most people don't, you know, with understanding the different programs and how they automate and connect. So I guess that's kind of my journey. And like I said, it's not always like, hey, everything was super successful right off the bat.
Yeah.
But it's
and that's my next question is, tell us something we're not speaking enough about when it comes to building a business that you love and you're passionate about it, that you want to work in every single day. What are we just not talking enough about?
What we're not talking about is that it's not as, it's going to sound kind of harsh, but it's not as sunshine and rainbows and stripe balances as everyone wants you to believe it is, if I'm being honest. It's ups and downs. There are days it's the best thing on the planet and you're so excited, and there are days that it's the worst thing on the planet and you feel uninspired and somebody makes a mean comment, or you know what I mean? And so it's not always linear. It's not like every month you grow and you grow and you grow. There are things that are going to be outside your control. There will be regulations and laws that come into place that change everything you need to do all of a sudden. And so I think the idea that in order to have a successful business, you have to be making so much money right off the bat, or so many figures per year, or doing things a certain way, I think is a big misconception. There are I think you talk about a lot, your fundamentals, but it's not yes. Is it good to have a website? Yes. Do you need to have a X number of page website? No. Are there benefits sometimes to having single pages for certain things? Yes. But everybody's needs are different, and everybody's website platform can be different. No one's going to be more successful because they're on WordPress than if they're on Squarespace, than if they're on, even Kajabi, as much as I don't love it for websites. It's more, there are fundamental things. Can people read your website? Can they click on the buttons? Can they easily navigate to where they want to be? Those things are more important than bells, whistles, platforms, all in one, not all in one, industry standard, which I know is also not one of your favorite terms. And that's,
we go way beyond industry standard.
Yes.
That's why we work together.
Yes.
So just nudge to those listening.
So I think that's where, business, it's about building a business that works for you. Yes, obviously we all want to make money, but it's also making money in a way that's sustainable for you and that you feel good about. If that's less figures, but that's less days a week and you're more present with your family, then you do you. If you want to be the person that's getting $5 million investors here and there and you're creating and selling, then you do you. But it's, there's no right or wrong way to do the business, and it's not always going to be linear. It's not always going to be the most successful day. And so I think almost expecting that I should be making this much off the bat, or if I'm not making X figures, I'm doing something wrong, which I know is a lot of messaging and marketing and social media nowadays. And I get it from the hook and the scroll stopping efforts, but I encourage just people not to always listen to that noise and to remember, everyone's going to have a different journey to success. Some people will say it was podcasts. Some people will say it was YouTube. Some people will say it's Instagram. Find what works for you, what you love doing, what you can sustain doing, and do that, because that's what's going to drive you more every day than the outside noise.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Especially that, find something that you can sustain. You can endure sometimes through different seasons. So, you kept saying it's not linear. You kept saying something that you can sustain. And that's what I find. I find the seasons, the ups and downs, the downs are so hard to weather, to keep going. And if you don't love your business, if you don't believe in your business, it's just not going to work out. So if you're chasing that money, those 6 figures a day, whatever.
Then you're only happy on the days that you've hit.
And I do find there's seasons of working hard and then seasons where you can step back. But, at some point, it's you're giving, 14 hours a day, and then others maybe 2. But it's not always 2, and it cannot be. And so that's what I love. I love that. All right. So now to wrap up, we ask the same question of everyone, is to go back in time to young you, however old you want to choose, but young you. I believe we give ourselves such a hard time, if only I knew. But I feel that young self made the mistakes, went through the mess on purpose. I really do believe that. And so what would you thank your young you for doing then decisions, whatever it was, that really set you up for the person you are, the place you are today?
So you're saying, what would I say to the person, or you're saying, what
would
do I
you,
think in my
what would you
past?
thank yourself for
Oh, okay,
doing?
got it. Okay.
If you were, thank yourself, or to say to that young person, but positive, what did they do right?
I would say not giving up and leaning into my faith were two very big things. I think I always knew from a young age that, okay, you might laugh, but, a lot of kids, especially, and girls and things, they always played with dolls, or they imagined being a mom and had like the names of their kids picked out and things. I was not. I was the one either picturing like I had a classroom and was like a teacher, or that I was like a business person. I don't know, but like I was somehow I had that in my head more than I did, being like a parent or having children's names or wanting to be a mom. And so I think realizing that, like, it's okay to be a little different. It's okay to have maybe some different passions, or to I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think of like a good answer, I guess. Just the fact that like I didn't give up. I leaned into who I was. I leaned into my passions, even if they were things like knitting and crocheting as a kid. They've made me incredible connections now. I remember my dad being like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe how much time you've spent on PowerPoint," because I was in high school at the same time like PowerPoint and stuff was coming out. So it was part of our, I think, history class. We had to do things like present in PowerPoint. So we were learning both the tools and history. And, I think that also leaned into why I love technology and clicking buttons and figuring out how things work. And so I think just kind of continuing to be true to myself, even if at times I felt very insecure with it and felt like I was weird or not the cool kid, or like I had to grow up too fast and things. So although that was really hard, I think like I also know it is the only reason I am where I am today. And so I feel very strongly that kind of not giving up, not trying to conform to what other people were. And again, leaning into my faith, because I think that came into my life at a very pivotal time. And obviously my parents helped, but it wasn't like I necessarily grew up with a like, oh, we always pray at the table, or my mom doing Bible study or anything like that. And my dad was Jewish. And so, for whatever reason, it just really cemented with me. And I remember like praying every night. I don't know, like kind of where I even started doing that from. But I do think that kind of always leaning into my faith and believing that God had a purpose, and always praying and thanking him for things, even if I don't understand what they are or how they are going to work out one day, or why I'm being faced with a particular challenge. So I guess those would be the two things. Sorry, I may have to cut that up a little bit, but yeah, I think those were two really big things, was that I leaned into my faith. I went to like youth group, got confirmed. Like I did certain things at a very pivotal and impressionable time, I guess you would say, and just kind of stuck with it, even if at times it wasn't fun to be the responsible kid or to always have a job. But I'm very fortunate to live the life that I do now, with the flexibility that I have, with the people I have in it, with the love and, being auntie to so many littles. It's somewhere I wouldn't be without those moments, even if they're not always my fondest memories in some ways. Not the faith part, but you know what I mean? Some of the growing up too fast parts.
Love it. I love that answer. All right, Lauren, how can people who should work with you, who should call you, besides me? Because I think I call you almost every day these days. So besides me, who are the people that should call you, and why should they call you?
So the people who I love to work with and who definitely need to call me are the ones who, is how I describe it, where their business is their baby. Right? Like they may have employees, they may have other contractors, they may have other people in the mix, but the business is their baby, right? Like they oversee things. They're still kind of the orchestrator of all the things. Because I can almost guarantee you, I literally have only ever talked to one person, and it was very brief, and she was asking about one very specific instance where I could not find a way to streamline or automate something in someone's business. I guarantee you there are things that you are doing that you don't need to be doing manually. There's things that could be simplified. There's probably in some way you're having your clients or customers take 2 or 3 steps when maybe they only need to take 1. If you're logging anything in a spreadsheet, chances are you don't need to be. So if there's anything in your tech that feels clunky, if you kind of look at things, you're like, I know I am underutilizing this, or I'm just using this like one portion I know how to use. That is what I'm here for. So whether we take a look at what you have and we figure out how to help you maximize what you're already using and paying for, whether we take a look at how to eliminate and kind of streamline some programs so that you're not paying for them, or that we're, like I said, cutting down on the steps, both for you or your clients. Or if you're like, okay, I am doing way too much manual, like let's build a plan, let's automate things, get in here, get it working smoother. We can do that. We'll build a plan and I will take the reins. But my goal is to make business easier for you so that you can still keep it growing in authenticity to you, but do it, like I said, with less headaches and hopefully less time or money. And I always like to let people know, I do not come in with a set tech stack. So as you can probably attest to, like I meet you where you are, meaning if you're somebody who like, I don't use to-do lists, I like everything in my inbox and I want every to-do item in this folder, we can set that up. If you're someone's like, I like Trello, we'll work with Trello. If you're an Asana tax person, we can do that. So like I will come in, I will look at how you like to work, the systems you're using, and we go from there. And if we need to introduce new tools, we'll look at that. But I will try to kind of stick with what you're using, right? We don't always need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to make the wheel more efficient, make it rounder maybe, so it rolls smoother.
I love that. And yes, I can definitely attest you are, I'd say you're tech agnostic and you can come in and work with the tech. Your strength is making the wheel smoother. I love that analogy, actually. That's going to work.
I came up with it on the fly.
That is going to work. Yes, because I can hand on heart promise you that you have saved me days in my life. But more importantly to me is that you've made my member experience, so like my customers. So for any business owner that serves customers in any way, that is the key thing, because then they stay longer, they tell their friends about you and all of that stuff. And so if their user experience is, and Lauren and I say this during our work sessions, like industry standard is nowhere close to what we're aiming for. So if that's you, yes, Lauren is, just call me. I'll tell you all about her.
Oh, thank you, Candace.
But thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to just wrap up with before we click stop?
I don't think so. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. I'm so excited for everything that we are building together, because yes, we are totally elevating your customer experience. And I'm so excited for people to see it and to be able to take advantage of it. So thank you. Thank you for everything, for having me as your guest.
Yeah, I love this chat.
Yes.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.